Olson's uncanny ability to motivate others, along with his appetite to win, make him the standard against which all leaders and speakers in the Juice Plus company are measured. That's my opinion. He is that good. Let's start with who Jeff Olson is and where you're from.
My story, my roots come out of the mountains. I have been around the mountains my whole life. The mountains forged me in my formative years. From Montana, lived in Utah, lived in Colorado, lived in Vermont, and I came out of that life and lifestyle, being outside, being in the mountains. As a young kid, I was a kinetic kid. I had to move. I had to keep moving. Thankfully, I existed and lived as a young kid before Ritalin because I probably was a candidate for it. Had I not found sport, the blessing that I had was to plug all of my energy into sport, and it was my outlet and my release.
We all know it ended up you competing in the Olympics 2 times, which was quite impressive and quite a feat.
As a young kid, as a young budding teenager, tons of testosterone. I gravitated towards the extreme sports. I got attracted to downhill skiing in a very interesting way. And I got into a program where I was the youngest in the bunch, and the older kids that I was in the weekend program with, they would terrorize all over the mountains, and I was the little kid, and they wouldn't wait for me. So I had to keep up. I fell a lot, I crashed a lot, I cried a lot, but if I wanted to roll with the big boys, I had to keep up. And when you put yourself out on the field of play, with people that are better than you, you rise to the occasion, whether in business and life, whatever. It's a good metaphor. And I talk about being on the field of play and playing with people that are better than you in this business. You raise your game. I had a quick learning curve to just roll with the guys and the crew that I wanted to keep up with. And so I had some early success as a young kid, and success breeds more success, and it's fun, right? It's fun winning, and that I loved being outside. I loved the speed. I loved the forces. I loved everything about it as an individual sport. I was doing other sports, but as I got into my teenage years, I kind of had to let go of this one, let go of this one, let go of this one, and I knew at a very early age that skiing was my thing. I called it my inner anchor. I was always the hardest worker, wasn't always the smartest worker. And actually that ended my career. I overtrained. Overtraining ended my athletic career. I trained too hard doing heavy squats, heavy plyometrics, squats all the way down, ruined my patella tendons. And so that lesson in life, overtraining, working hard will get you far in life. But sometimes working hard is not enough. And I wasn't working smart. And so I took that. After 10 years on the U.S. ski team, I retired with busted up knees. I'm recreationally sufficient now. The thing about my sport that I took for granted at the time that I see now in my career and business is fear. I had an interesting relationship with fear as a downhill ski racer. A mentor of mine once told me, he said, if you can come to that place when you recognize fear and say, finally a worthy competitor, and have that be a game with fear. I was fortunate to learn how to enjoy fear, welcome fear. Fear focuses things. And so I had 10,000 hours of kind of dealing with fear. You can imagine downhill ski racing, 70, 80, 90 miles an hour. That was always kind of there. And so that was I guess a life skill that I learned at the time. I didn't realize how much I would use it on later in life. But my 2 claims to fame in my athletic career was I won a gold medal in 1992 Olympic Games. That's my wife. We met at the Olympic Games in the 92 Olympics. She was working. And then the other claim to fame I have is I think I'm the only athlete in World Cup history to land a 360 going over 60. I caught an edge right before a jump, and it spun me around and I literally did a complete 360 in the air, landed, got back on my top, kept going. And there's a story in there because I had conditioned myself to just learn how to do that unconsciously, just hucking around the mountain with kids and jumping. And I had done so many 360s over the years as a young kid. I had conditioned it and I was unconsciously competent. I just reacted, landed that thing and kept going. But conditioning is a theme I talk about. I retired after 10 years. It was a good run and I got a wife out of the deal. So I married up and I won.
There's not many two-time Olympians, not at all. Jeff is one of them. What was it like to show up at the Olympics and look at that competition around you?
Well, like I said, when you surround yourself with people that are better than you, you elevate. You either stand and deliver, or you crash and burn. It's all learning lessons. One of my coaches, he told me, said, the difference between good and great is just nothing more than an authentic, relentless execution, of fundamentals. And what's interesting about my career is my mind ended up getting the better of me. I thought too much. I was a thinking athlete, as they're called. Sometimes it pays to not think too much in sport and in this business, right? So my mind got the better of me in my career. I look back at those times, all learning lessons. But when you're at that level, it's very electric, very high energy. All of the things that I learned in athletics, I apply in my life and in my marriage and as a dad. And it's funny how many life lessons you learn from your youth that come back to serve you well in life.
Let's step into your professional career. In other words, your education after high school.
I retired after the Lillehammer Olympics in '94. So when I retired, I dove back into schoolwork and got kind of through my general ed, and I had to pick my major. I thought I was going to be a teacher. I thought I was going to follow in my parents' footsteps. I had to pick a major because I had run out of all my general ed. So I got a degree in finance and actually ended up getting my first job because of that degree from a friend in the ski world working on Wall Street. So with a degree in finance, I ended up headed off to Wall Street in the money business. Ambition drove me to Wall Street. Then after that, I did that for about 5 years, was traveling a ton. We started to have kids and I realized traveling like that wasn't really conducive to being a dad in terms of just time with your family. So I had to leave that career and I got into the technology startup business, software. The internet was budding at the time, and I went to work for a technology company. Learned a lot of great things about technology, about innovation, learned about startups. But across sport, across money, across technology, I was kind of just trying to be a provider, working for the man, trying to be support my family, and we had 2 kids at the time, another one on the way, and I was hustling, I was grinding, but I was life after sport, carry on, and I was trying to do what all men are supposed to do, is provide for your family. But I wasn't that fulfilled. I was kind of grinding it out, and I realized after about 7-8 years in the business world that there's a lot of Peter Principle managers and a lot of mediocrity in business, and it took me a while because I really didn't know anything. I was so naive. But after a while, I was like, this is maybe not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And about that time, Juice Plus came along, and as I said, we were happy customers.
Wow. Well, you brought up Juice Plus. Okay, so let me go to this next question, being you brought Juice Plus up. So now we know something about your background, your education, an athlete, the way you've competed at such a high level. We all know you and your wife, Tony, and you've become partners with the Juice Plus company, which you just mentioned. I'm a little curious as to how that initial introduction happened. Could you elaborate on that? And I guess the next question would be, were you jumping in immediately?
I was introduced to plant powders, and that's how they occurred to me, as plant powders. I heard the words Juice Plus, but for whatever reason, I was able to see right through the name and understand actually what it was. And I talk about, it was a category distinction. It was categorically different in my brain. And so it made immediate sense to me. I was like, plant matter, plant powders. Well, that's refreshingly simple. That makes sense. And I took it to my wife, who I married up. She's Ivy League, magna summa cum laude, double major. One was a degree in nutrition. She's the brains. And I said, this stuff really makes a ton of sense. We should get on this stuff. And of course, she poo-pooed it and had to learn about it from someone else. Enter the concept of third-party validation, but which she did about a year later from somebody else. And I said to her, that's that stuff you won't let us take, because she buys the groceries, in our household. And so it was a year later that it came to her, and then she took her own action. She didn't want to listen to me, as the 20-year joke goes in our house, but she had to hear about it from someone else. So she did. It made sense after she did her homework, right? Then she actually took the time to go to a conference, went and saw how it was made in north of San Diego, and saw the plant powders. And she came back and she said, I'm going to do this as a side hustle, side business. And I'm like, you go, girl. I was supportive. That's the one thing I did well. I was a supportive spouse. I understood it as a consumer. I understood it just as an athlete. Or athletes are ruthlessly practical, and they tend to do what works. And I said, this makes sense. It's going to work. I understood it's going to have a compounding effect over time. It made sense to me. But when she came back to me and she said, do the business, a lot of women in our business crush it. And we men are the minority. And there's a good reason for that, because women are caregivers. And when they find things they like, they share it. All that to say, I was supportive. And so she took off, started the business, and, fast forward a few months, and she was paying the mortgage with her little itty bitty Juice Plus check. And the saying, it starts out as her business, and then when the check gets big enough, it becomes our business, as they say. And I was like, what's this? Got my attention. Show me the money. That, if it's real. And when she started paying the mortgage, I started to plug in a little more and tune in a little bit more. And my frustration in the corporate world at the time, I was like, what if this is the real deal? What if this is the Velveteen Rabbit? What if? I believed in the principle of Juice Plus, in the innovation of Juice Plus, in the category distinction of Juice Plus. I believed something could be built upon that idea that was enduring and timeless. I understood that this is kind of a no-brainer, and no one else in the world seems to be having this thing, this innovative thing that everyone needs and no one has. And so I was like, wow, we could really build something with this. And my business brain, I kind of came into it with kind of corporate speak and corporate thinking. And I was intellectually ignorant. I mean, I just did not know what I did not know. I had a big ego, which is maybe an acronym for excludes great opportunity, but I was supportive enough to kind of be her date, attend events. And as I say, I marinated in the conversation, in the business conversation. And then I met folks like Doug Barlow and Kerry Daigle and Jim Gonsolin and Elton. I started, these are my people. I like to hang out with these people. And that just takes time, just due diligence, right? And it took me several years and a lot of brain damage and a lot of mental gymnastics, but I had to deconstruct the business in my business brain, because I was trying to be the smart, ex-athlete guy, poke holes in it. And then you get down the road a little bit, and then you got to look in the mirror. What are you doing, Jeff, to help our family grow this little itty bitty Juice Plus business? And that was 15 plus years ago. And my reckoning came when I really just had to understand that this business is built, one conversation at a time, one person at a time, a powerful leverage principle. We can talk about that in a little bit, just the principle of business leverage. But I just had to get in the trenches and start doing the work. You put on my overalls, just blue collar activity, and just go to work. Because I had these highfalutin ideas on, blast faxes and redo the marketing plan and come up with all this stuff. And I was humbled in really great ways. Success leaves clues. So I was a student. I've always been a student of anything that I'm in. I'm into the game of life, and I like to hustle. And so I was paying attention to all these successful people, and I was like, I want their life. I want what they have. And so I started paying attention and learning about some simple things, and then uh, demystifying some of my preconceived notions about one of those things, those kind of businesses. Just complete intellectual ignorance. I just didn't know what I didn't know, and I realized that, wow, this is a very different animal than what my stereotype or my assumption was. This is a real business in the real world, making real difference, doing well by doing good, built on something that's timeless. It's built to last. The principles are there. The people are there. The process is there. It's like, what's your problem, Jeff? So that's a collapse of, several years of my own learning. And then, finally I just had to, get on with it and get going as something that could be a possibility for myself, and trying to find a voice as a man in this business, and figure out how I could carry myself and have a conversation with people, and use my athletic past and bring just sort of the man speak, into this business, amidst all these, women that were crushing it, but then all these men I admired, like yourself and others on the call tonight. And so I would say it was about 3 or 4 years in when I started really beginning to think, maybe this is my ticket out of having a job and out of being an indentured servant. And boy, wouldn't it be fun to join my wife full time in this? And healthcare was on our mind. That was a driver for her to get those benefits. And so it was about 3 or 4 years in, as a supportive spouse, and then transitioning into, hey, let's do this together with Tony.
What, in your professional opinion, makes this product so different?
Like I said early on, I saw it from day one as categorically different. And for some people, it takes them quite a while until the light bulb goes off in the pantry shelf of people's brains. The pantry is very busy in people's brains. And once they understand that Juice Plus, the brand, like Crest, the brand, is toothpaste in a tube, or is plant powders, once they understand the category distinction from the industry's sort of poster child approach, which is kind of conventional wisdom, status quo, black and white TV versus, high res color, high def, is the multivitamin. And I understood the difference straight away. And that's a monster difference. Like once people get that distinction, categorically from day one, I understood it was a bit of a think different idea. And 10 years later, I just sort of came up with, I named it plant powders. I'm like, I knew it was different. I just didn't have a name for it. And the thing about categories, and this is for, categories are sticky. And people will create new shelf space for a new category. Ride sharing didn't exist several years ago, and then Uber came along, created a category. Internet search didn't exist 20 years ago, and then Alta Vista came along, and then Google shortly after created a category, right? Streaming was not anything, and now it's a thing, right? Netflix, right? And you begin to like mobile devices. Think of all the devices you had to have, before Apple came along and created a new category, right? They created a new category. So I understood, and coming out of technology, I had that experience of, in technology, and in innovation, there's two kinds of innovation. There's incremental innovation. And incremental innovation, it makes new things that makes old things better. But I saw this as a disruptor. It was a disruptive innovation. And what disruptive innovation is it makes new things that makes old things obsolete. And that's what I saw in Juice Plus. I saw these plant powders, they're going to change standard of care in modern medicine. People will be recommending plant powders instead of your big horse pill someday. Rest assured. They will be recommending plant powders in the medical profession someday. And it's our job to go get as much market share as we can, because we'll have competitors someday. And I saw that 20 years ago. I saw it as a daily regimen for athletic performance. And so categorically, I understood plant powders back then. I named it 10 years later. Plant powders is the category. Here's my sort of summation on that. The world will know of plant powders because of our company. And I talk about it in such a way around concepts and ideas that keeps people's brains opening. Because how many people have ever said the word juice plus and you see people's brains just kind of shut down? Like it's wah, wah. It's our job to keep their brains open long enough to give them enough education so they understand what they're saying yes or no to. And so I talk about, the way I talk about it with athletes, I say, are you familiar with food conditioning with plant powders? And they're like, what? Food conditioning is the how, conditioning effect. One of the things I learned in the financial business is compound interest. You know, Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world. You know, those who own it earn it, and those who don't pay for it. Compounding interest with money, same thing with food. There is a compounding effect to good food over time. It trains and conditions better bodies. It elevates your physiology. And so the conditioning effect, using sort of athlete speak, athletes understand conditioning. And I talk about human performance. Look, pregnancy, man, that's human performance. And it's just the body working better. So I talk about food conditioning with plant powders. And then if that triggers their curiosity, then I unpackage it a little bit more. And it's like, we've been given the exclusive distribution rights to toothpaste in a tube 100 years ago, where conventional wisdom was baking soda, but someone came up with put it in a little squeezy thing and it's hygienic, you can carry it, it's mobile, but no one knew what that was 100 years ago. And here we go, here we come. This is toothpaste in a tube. Here's how it works. It's hygienic, it's safe, it's mobile. You replaces that, it's easy. Oh, by the way, ... after, 8 innings of conversation in the 9th inning, then you can say, oh, we're Crest, right? Oh, I had no idea Juice Plus was plant powders. I thought it was a juice, or I thought it was a vitamin pill. So I talk about who we are or what we are with category distinction, if that makes sense.
It does, Jeff. It sure does. Now, in my opinion, I know you as a tremendous entrepreneurial mind, because we talk about business a lot. You have your degree in finance that you mentioned earlier. You've got your experience from working on Wall Street. What part of this business transformed you from traditional corporate thinker to a Juice Plus entrepreneur and accepting our business model?
It's a great question. I came in with a tremendous amount of resistance to the quote unquote business model. I had illusions of knowledge. I didn't know what I didn't know. And as I came to understand who, what, how, when, where, why of this adventure, I realized that all of my objections, all of my concerns, all of my shark tanking, poking the bear, testing were valid questions. And I welcome the rigorous questions from people, but I just wanted to get my questions answered. And I did get them answered. And I encourage people to, don't spend 3 or 4 years like I did. Get them answered quickly. But what turned the corner for me, I think we had our third daughter, and I had left the corporate world. Tony had become a national marketing director, and I kind of settled in to let's make a go of this. We lived quite lean and mean for several years, but kind of burned the bridges. We kind of said, hey man, on the field of play, all in, let's roll, let's go do this. And built upon this, when you start, you want this company and this community to have your back, and then you get to a place in leadership and you get invited to the Elton Awards. The man is on the horn here tonight with us, Mr. Elton Bose. When you get invited to the Elton Awards named after him, you realize that, man, now it's time for me to start having this community's back and realizing we have something that's built to last. 20 years ago, people struggled with eating enough good food. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, today, I'm banking, I've put my career in the hopper with this company to say, hey, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years from now, people are still going to be challenged with eating enough great food every day, enough nutrient dense food every day. We help with the execution part. We help bridge that gap on the execution part. And it's all conversation, blah, blah, blah. It's about action. It's about the application of what you know to be true. And it's built upon that. And so when I settled in and said, hey, let's go build this thing, the business principle that I was banking on would come through is the business principle of leverage. You can take out debt and have financial leverage. You can do options and stock trading. A lot of ways to do with financial instruments to create leverage to get 10x, 3x, 5x. But social leverage is what we do. And you can make what I call me money, which is, I call it, you can be a health food agent with us. Everyone understands what an agent is, and there's a commission. You can just do that. And that's what most people do in our business. But where the leverage comes in is when you can have collaborative profits and revenue share, right? And I understood that business principle. It's the one nugget that creates leverage to where you make we money. There's me money, and then there's we money. And that leverage gives you the ability to go earn the kind of income that you need to earn to support a family and raise them and put them through college and have the life of your dreams. And so the idea of leverage is a nugget in this business model. And we are very, very different than the traditional status quo of the industry in that we've kind of cherry picked from various business models. And Jay Martin was really sharp to understand this early on. It's kind of a mashup of franchising and direct sales and network marketing and corporate. I do not know of another company that works with independent contractors, 1099, independent agents out in a global field where here in America, we can have healthcare benefits. I don't know of another company that works with independent contractors that offers healthcare benefits. That makes us a unicorn in my mind. We do things very, very differently than the status quo. And I had to learn that and understand that because I was very resistant to some of the things that have given maybe some of the business models a bad name. And I came to find that they didn't exist at this company. So 20 years in, I keep, subtlety and nuance and distinction. As you become a student of this, you just keep peeling back the onion and keep learning. And you realize that this thing, is built to last. And as I said, it's been our career for the last 15 years as a husband and wife team. So
I got to ask your opinion on something. Is that a lot of people always saying that we're in the network marketing industry. And I beg to differ about that. I think we're in the whole food industry.
As we are not a multivitamin, we're plant powders. We are not a traditional network marketing company. These business models gain reputations for very real reasons. And some of the reasons in franchising or in network marketing, you got to address those. It's the elephant in the room, whether people ask the question or not. And it was a question in my mind.
MLM is a challenging space because there's a lot of negative
perceptions.
Absolutely.
Where I referenced that I'm not a big fan of MLM, I'm very comfortable saying that. The reason I'm not a fan of the industry model is because I've never met any other industry, and there's plenty of, all industries are the same. It's not like anything is attracting. There's scum buckets in corporate America, there's awesome people in corporate America. There's scum buckets in ML, there's the entrepreneurs, the young, it's all the same. There's one fundamental difference that turns me off substantially. I just have, and this is just data collection. I'm just stunned by how many people think the model is, I'm gonna find somebody to do all the work for me. Like, I've never met an industry also that actually oftentimes has no understanding or passion for the product that's actually being sold. That's a problem.
Upfront fees, having to spend thousands of dollars, what's called a buyer's club or front end loaded.
I like the fact that you can completely put it out there.
What you often find in the traditional approach is high buy-in fees, buyer's club, spend $1,000 to get the starter kit. It's called front end loading, right? And that front end loading, when you spend $1,000, $1,500 to join the club and buy the starter packet, that's some good coin, right? And they wanted to get away from that and actually build a customer base. That's what business is having a raving fan customer base. And when I understood that this is built on customers, that's something that's built to last. But then the leverage comes from just a small revenue share of other people that have a large customer base. And so the other thing that's unfortunate about the industry is kind of overhyping and blue skying, and we are very different in that regard. We take an under promise and over deliver approach to that, but we don't have the high buy-in fees, that front end load. We are not compensated when someone gets into our business. Let me say that again, right? Traditional network marketing, there's recruiting compensation, there's recruiting fees. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that I didn't want to be a part of. Just something I didn't want to be compensated for recruiting someone into a club. And that's a little gray zone. So when I found out that that's not what this is, I was like, oh, good, thank goodness, right? And so again, as I said, I don't know of another company like in franchising, let alone network marketing, let alone direct sales, that offers a full healthcare benefits package and health insurance and so forth. And so once I understood how we were different and what we were not, then man, that was wind in my sails to say, let's grip this and rip this and get on with it. And it created a sense of urgency, right? Because all of those concerns just washed away once I understood what it actually really was. And that's our job, right? Our job is to actually go out and enlighten people, because people just really don't know what we are on the business side or the product side. And that's why they pay us, to go out and educate and illuminate and enlighten people, to show them a better way.
I would be curious to know, what has been your greatest inspiration? And secondly, your greatest fear, and how did you manage that fear?
Another mentor of mine, you're a mentor of mine, Kerry, but another mentor of mine, he said this to me long ago and it stuck with me. So stay with me here for a second. He said, inspiration is for amateurs. And when I heard that, it caught me. We all have an amateur nature because we're human, we're people. Like, we need to be inspired, right? And I get inspired all the time by the stories I hear of people in this business, whether it's the health outcome they've had with our plant powders, or the business outcome they've had. The inspiration from people. The pro side of me doesn't need that. And so we need both. We need to be inspired. If you go pro and you want to be a pro, you do this because this is you're a student of the game. You love the game. You love what you do. There is a joy found in effort. That's plucked right out of the Olympic charter. Having a joy found in effort on the field of play. You love the process. You get inspired by the process, by the doing, by the conversations, by the work. That inspires you. It fills you. So to answer your question, I get inspired by people. I get inspired. The pro side of me gets inspired by the game, by the hustle, by the joy found in effort of the work. This is good work. So that inspires me. What's my greatest fear? Always, every day I wake up and it haunts me, as I'm sure it haunts everyone. How can I not live up to all the gifts that I've been given? To those whom much is given, much is expected. I get up every day. People have morning rituals. Mine's pretty simple. I wake up my feet hit the ground, and I try to revel in gratitude from the moment I hit the ground running. When you're forged out of that stuff, and we live in America, and we have blessing, gratitude. I come out of that place, and so my fear is that I don't live up to all the gifts that I've been given and the responsibility that I've been gifted with. And so my greatest fear is that I just don't finish strong. The most celebrated virtue in the ancient Greek culture it was called arete. And arete was basically the convergence of excellence, mastery, and purpose. Excellence that was bound by a purpose, and it was the most celebrated virtue in ancient Greece. It was sort of culminated with the metaphor of the Olympic Games and athletes as a representation of arete, but it was culturally pervasive, of excellence bound by purpose. And so my greatest fear is I don't live up to that. And then how I manage fear, I think that was your other question, is it's finally a worthy competitor. When I'm fearful, it's probably something I should pay attention to, probably something that's meaningful, it's important. And I'll give you just a story from my athletic past. When we would come to a new downhill ski race, new mountain, new course, a lot of uncertainty, not knowing speed, timing, force, elements, bumps, jumps. There's a lot going on in downhill skiing, and the penalty for error can be quite high. Penalty for error in this business is not that high unless you're doing something illegal. But the penalty for error of just like not saying the right thing, not a big penalty, but penalty for error in my sport was really high. And so fear focuses things, and butterflies are okay as long as they fly in formation. But I'll tell you, this is the concept. Once I took one training run on a new course and got to the bottom, it was a game changer. Once that activity got put on the field of play and I activated through my fear and did the thing, then I got to the other side of it. It was like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And the first thing is, I want to go up back there and do it again. Same thing in our business, same thing in life, same thing in things that are fearful. Once you go through them with the action, you get to the other side of that thing. It's like, that wasn't so bad. Actually, I kind of like that. I want to do again. So that's how I manage fear, is it gets my attention, finally a worthy competitor, and then the action usually dissipates the fear.
What business related book, has inspired you the most?
Good question. I'm going to give you two books. One's for the head, one's for the heart. And it's a book by John Eldridge called Wild at Heart. And it speaks to my faith, but in terms of a business book, Wild at Heart, he said, we have a blueprint in us that hungers, yearns, craves, desires, seeks, hunts for a noble battle to fight, an adventure to be on, and beauty to rescue. Those three things. And find a noble battle in life, get on with that adventure, and go rescue some beauty. And don't we have that in this business? We have a noble battle. Make no mistake about it. It is an adventure. No doubt it is an adventure. I was doing a training with one of our young team members this morning, and the adventure is people, right? Because people are fascinating, are they not? That's the adventure. And boy, do we rescue beauty. And so that's kind of from the heart-led side is Wild at Heart, those three principles. I've used them every day since I read that book. And then I guess on the head side, it's a book called Play Bigger. And it's in that book where I learned kind of what I knew instinctually, but I couldn't name it, about this idea of categories and companies. It's just about how companies who dominate their category, they're category kings as they're called. Those companies that dominate categories win. And especially when they use the leverage with technology in the category. It's just called Play Bigger. And in there, it talks about category design. And we own the lane of plant powders. The world's going to know of plant powders because we've created the category, pioneered the category, lead the category, and steward the category. And we're going to be the best for the world in that category. So Play Bigger is the name of the book.
Great book. Good choices. I like it. In closing, if you were to write a book about yourself, how would you title it?
How would I title it?
Yes.
Oh, there's a book written called One Word, and it asks you to pick one word to live into for the year. And I've done that for the last 8 years. Last year, my word was magnanimous. This year, my word is revere. I go back to magnanimous. I just love having a magnanimous spirit. It's basically being a good sport, winning well, having grace, having forgiveness, having a big sort of winsome warrior, spirit, not taking yourself too seriously, but just being graceful amidst rivals. And I think magnanimous, maybe if I had to use one word, the book magnanimous might be kind of fun. But something that speaks to my heart every day is what I already talked about. It's maybe the book is A Joy Found in Effort. Lessons from the game of life on the field of play. My belief is we're all athletes in the game of life, and people, kind of turn away from that. But you think about when you were a child and when you played games and when you were in that sense of wonder and that sense of play. Play actually is one of the highest forms of intelligence that there is. If you can play in this business, you're going to be a master Jedi in this business. If you can come from a place of play, a lightness of being, Jay being one of the best at it, having humor dissipates friction, creates a lightness of being. And so on the field of play, with a joy found in effort, I guess if I had to title my book, it'd be A Joy Found in Effort, Lessons Learned on the field of play in the game of life.
I like it. We really appreciate you taking your time tonight. I kind of went into some personal questions, but we got a good understanding of your feeling about our plant powders and also about our company and definitely our business. To watch that conversion and watch you over the years come from corporate America and that Wall Street executive mindset, to be able to come in and watch you transform into the person you are today, to me, is something that's very gratifying because you're such a big asset to what we all do. So I want to say thank you very much for spending your time with us tonight and answering some of these crazy questions, but it gets the world to know you a lot better. And why does Wall Street exec and this Olympic athlete join the Juice Plus business?
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and privilege. I've learned so much from you over the years, as I have from many of the people that are on this call. I'll just kind of lead for those that are tuning in or hearing this for the first time. I would encourage you to do your homework, do your due diligence, lean in, ask the questions, get with the person inviting you to the call. Generally have a high bar, have high expectancy, but no expectations, and do the work and learn what you're saying yes or no to, and get to a strong yes or a strong no. And as I said before, we're a real company in the real world with real people making a real difference, one conversation at a time. And we're going to keep on doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 27 years for the next 27 years. So as we say, there's trends, there's timing, and there's timeless. And we're kind of a little bit of all three. We're trending plant powders, we're timely, and we're timeless because we have something that meets the needs for the last 27 years and the next 27 years. So with that, the invitation is wide open to lean in, learn more, connect, and raise your game. So we'll see you on the field of play. Thank you so much, everyone.
See you later. Yeah.